Two words. Or trying to find two words I couldn't find online. Ape or gorilla and whale. Just regular whale.
Yai is whale.
Okay, yeah.
Y, high toned A, Y. I don't know of any word for ape or gorilla. Andat kanehiki is the word for monkey.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
So you could just throw plane on the end of that. And that could probably do for now.
Yeah, because.
But when Planet of the Apes comes for real, we'll probably need me.
I think. Do we actually have any P's in our?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure. But yeah, it's only just because I'm going off of the poster, and I've been trying to figure out how to say Godzilla. But in the Japanese term, it's Gojira, which is gorilla and whale.
Oh, really?
Meshed together, yeah. So I'm going over the direct translation instead of Godzilla.
But isn't he like a big lizard?
Well, yeah, because like he's a giant dinosaur that got mutated because it was a Godzillasaurus, but they still termed it as Gojira.
What about Hintak Christensen?
Like T-Rex?
Well, that could just be Christensen.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like the monstrous lizard in the water. Because he's always coming out of the water.
Yeah. And that's where the whale comes in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that was just something I thought we've been trying to figure out on that. That's actually a better idea because I can't figure out how I would mesh whale and ape.
Breathe fire?
Together.
I don't know. Does he?
What's that?
Does he breathe fire? Can he breathe fire?
Yeah, it's radioactive energy beams. Like on the newest one, he rips open one of the monsters by opening up their jaw and then just spraying in there with this huge beam of radioactive power.
I haven't seen it.
Oh,
I've seen the old one.
spoiler.
Yeah, I've seen the old one.
Mothra.
Yeah, go on.
Pustin atra.
How do you say that?
Pustin clay shoe is probably how I'd say it. Pustin clay shoe. Any other monsters we need to name?
Yeah. King Kong.
Loch Ness.
Oh yeah.
That's team.
Bigfoot.
Yeah. But then the team K, it's like just a lizard.
But it can't physically walk on land, though.
Right? Yeah.
Right? It only
So it's
has
kind of
fins,
slanted.
so it's like a yai with a big long neck. What do you call a giraffe?
Like a whale log.
Sedechwad. That's what I would call it.
I always thought that would be kind of fun to do because, like, I was trying to figure out where, like, asking some people online about on the little community posts. It was like for African names for the animals, like lions and tigers and bears.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And stuff like that. Like for other monsters, I definitely would go with Cthulhu. I think that'd be like the one that would just immediately translate into Cthulhu.
Oh, right.
Cthulhu.
What is?
He's
He's
a god of destruction and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and madness.
What's that
I
guy's
saw the
name
Metallica song.
who wrote those stories? Man, what's his name? He was super racist.
Oh man. He was?
Yeah.
The person who wrote Wizard of Oz was.
Oh, really?
He didn't.
Walt Disney.
I was gonna bring. Do you have any stuffed animals in the lab?
I don't think so. Oh, well, better cancel class.
No.
I actually.
When are you gonna
go check.
grab one?
I actually went to those
Do you want me to?
those Tlingit book readings. So if you ever, just let me know because I got a whole bunch of like Tlingitized animals and puzzles from those little kids readings and stuff.
Ravens.
Yeah, like one of them was actually a killer or an orca with the Tlingit designs on the sides.
Oh, like those
puppets.
ones. Those ones from Sitka.
There's one that's an owl.
Yeah.
From this, it looks like it's supposed to look like a Northwest Coast form line.
Yeah.
Owl. Cool. You need to do something about the form lines on those puppets.
Yeah.
It's like you could see my eyes rolling through the.
Look at you. You were gonna fix it for us. And then the owl has this giant nose. But then I told them Chokdachaya hel on kuste. Yesh ka ausatin. Dasa ausatin e kach kauta ichi at khan. Shugunach khan awa. Kak aya. Kak du iqaku washi. Kahuk anawus. Akhuni guk. Achite we khan. Ye kliyadi adishu. Ye nakako. Take. Kasachto ashka achshu ach kaudagani. Yes, heshwasa kwati. Guk heshwasa kwati. Akal deki deu dekin. We kak. Khan wusitak. Kuk deu dekin. Kau. Nich kach ayayante. Ye away ach akawagan dishu. Ishan ayachat kesachji achshu. Yesh the Jew na shu na iji do yak aya awat a kawati yesh achawe we kak aya chishuku yacheti de shu na ka hu. So yeah, if we cut that little owl's ears off, it would work. Does anybody need a translation for that story? It was a very short, abbreviated version. There's storytellers who do a much better job. Good, no translations needed. Anybody got any questions before we get started? We're waiting for an animal. We're going to do a little exercise.
Oh, that was actually something I was going to say was, like, since how everything is kind of popping around in pop culture, is that Japan has actually been using a lot of hideout art and century art, and like Seattle-based art, you know, in a lot of their shows right now. And that was something I was wanting to.
These are for their kids.
Oh, okay, I just need one.
Oh.
Pick one. Pick any.
What?
Just real quick though.
Wait, I can't.
Yeah, real quick. There's actually a bird in the kids series where
Tawe.
yeah, his name is Khatu.
Wasaduasa caribou.
Yisikuge wasadu asal caribou shingekhinach.
Yeah,
Watsik yakeha. Dasakudasa. Yocht gwash. Yocht. Takaikat tadakasa twasabu. Wait. Ishan.
What's up?
Katse wakok ya kriyatab. Has to final exam away. Intermediate Tlingit. Hasawe was dasa yituasagu way tests was puppet show yitli puppet show hasal okay how yeah. Everybody out there doing okay?
That's much better. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had several donated stuffed animals, so I don't complain. A couple of them that I've been receiving, I don't even know what this is supposed to be. In
Tasso.
Separate from this?
Yes. Yacht is the one that's in the ocean. Kushta is the one that's on the land and in the rivers.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Chinach Yisikuke wasadu asal weka. Tawe. Yayanaka. Tawe. So looking from left to right on the screen, I see Kuwuch, Kushatzin, Ku, Sisala, Tokaha, and pasuk. So I'm going to ask you guys 3 questions. And I'll expect 3 answers. You'll each get the same questions, but one answer will change. Wasa itu wasak.
So next, I asked, you had to sock,
Okay. Wasa khatu wasak.
Kune, you do a sock,
You itu wasak.
you would do a sock.
What ye itu wasak.
Question.
Wasa do wasak.
Tawe, ye do a sock.
Okay. Wasa itu wasak.
Yach, goose. You could do a sock.
Wasa khatu wasak.
Is that a taku? Oh,
Kune.
kune. Sorry.
Ye itu wasak. Ye itu wasak. Ye naka. Ye itu wasak.
Oh, yeah, it do a sock.
Wasa do wasak. Tawe.
Tawe. Do a sock.
Okay. Person near the Washington area. Wasa itu wasak.
Kuwuch ye khatu asak.
Wasa khatu wasak.
Khune ye idu asak.
Wasa do wasak.
Tawe ye du asak.
Okay. Person in California. Wasa itu wasak.
I don't know how to answer that.
Okay. Tuwulatsin hu.
Tawut, suckling to.
Ye khatu wasak.
I don't know the answers to these.
Oh, no, I'm giving you the answer. Just repeat after me. It's okay. Ye khatu wasak.
Ye hut do a sock.
And then if the question is wasa khatu wasak, so the pronoun just changed. So you would say khune.
Kune,
Ye itu wasak.
ye et do a sock.
And if I say wasa do wasak, you would say tawe ye do wasak.
Tawe ye do a sock.
Okay. Suspect number 1 in White Horse. Wasa itu wasak.
Tagu hayu khatu sak,
Wasa khatu wasak.
khune ya du sak.
You itu wasak. Wasa do wasak.
Tuwu ye du sak,
Tawe.
awe ye du sak.
Okay. Formerly known as Yetuchka. Wasa itu wasak.
Tisala yu khatu asak.
Wasa khatu wasak.
Kune yu idu asak.
Wasa do wasak.
Kawe yu do asak.
Okay. Person in Sitka. Wasa itu wasak.
Patluk yu khatu asak.
Wasa khatu wasak.
Khune ye du asak.
Wasa do wasak.
Tawe ye du asak.
Okay. Wasa itu wasak.
Do a sock.
Wasa khatu wasak.
Khune ye do a sock.
Wasa do wasak.
Tawe ye do a sock.
Okay, so we're doing what kind of pronouns here?
Me, you,
Them.
he or she. Oh.
Object pronouns. Those are object pronouns.
Yes,
Those were
yeah.
not incorrect answers, but not necessarily what I was looking for. So we use an object pronoun in this particular verb, and it goes khat for me, I for you, 0 for him or her. Okay, and we'll look at some other examples, some other verbs. Okay. Let me show you guys this thing now. Oh, okay. Pashuk is not in Sitka, he's at the Seattle airport. Okay, the invention is now complete. All your verbs will be conjugated through the verb conjugation machine. So let me explain what we're looking at here. This was just for fun, but I wish I'm actually going to make probably several variations of this to show, as we get into more verbs, how they are conjugated. So if we were sort of looking at this as some theoretical switchboard of how we conjugate verbs, starting on the top left is the very first leftmost position of the verb. When I say left, it's if you write the verb, and it's also the first thing you would hear. So there's a section called a preverb, which gets turned on in certain verb modes. This is why you hear things like yanagut, kenakain, ye undegun. It's a certain verb mode, and it's to say it is in the process of happening right now. There are other forms where sometimes the preverb pops up. So this is why you'd say, let me zoom in here. And some of you know these phrases. You would say, su ye ikwasatin. And the ye is coming from here. And this means future verbs that are, and we'll get to like this, a bunch of stuff that gets packed into a verb that you just have to sort of learn. And so you learn what type of verb it is. It belongs to this certain thing, and it has this conjugation prefix, and it has this classifier group, and it has this stem variation. So when you learn a verb, conveniently, achawe Tlingit aya, because it's Tlingit, you just gotta remember all these different qualities about that particular verb. There's a number of things, too, that will push the verb into what we call plus D. Plus D means the classifier is going to be affected because the subject is also becoming an object. Sorry, it's most commonly what's going on. And so that, for example, if you say whoosh or whooch, it's interchangeable. There may be certain situations where one's preferable over the other, that it's going to be a plus D verb. Right? So these are some things you could say, ye jitune, we're all working, maybe we're all working on different things. Whoosh ye jitudine, maybe we're all working on the same thing and we're doing this thing together. So reciprocal means together, to do something together. And you're specifying there's multiple, hands working on the same thing, for example. Shout out any questions if you got it. We're going to go through this whole switchboard.
Still kind of got one about that D. You said it was for, what was it for, like adding the D, or is it just?
So the classifier has a D component which can turn on, it can be activated. I like this thing because you activate certain things, like an on and off switch is how you think of it. And so there's certain things that will activate that D component in the classifier.
Okay.
And those would be to do something to yourself, or to say, I bought coffee for myself, right? So the announcement would be, for whatever reason, I would say I bought coffee for me, but not for anybody else, as opposed to if I just walked in the room and said, I bought coffee, then everyone would assume, hey, this guy's nice, he bought us all coffee. I bought coffee for myself. That's saying I didn't buy it for you. And so there are certain ways to do that in a verb. And so in Tlingit, when somebody is affected by the verb, or if something is affected by the verb, then that's shown in what's called middle voice. And English doesn't have that, but Tlingit does. And so this is one of the ways that it does it. And the other thing is it could be I'm doing this verb, but I'm also affected by this verb. And there are certain verbs that are just like that. They're always plus D, like to exist.
Okay.
So when we look at the classifier, there's this whole list that's plus D, and you can hear it when you start to recognize it. And then the more you sort of see examples, the more it starts to become clear after about 10 years what the thing is doing. Maybe less.
Okay, so, oh yeah, I was gonna say, it was pretty much that turns practically one word into like half a sentence.
Well, it's a really slight change. But what happens, so in English you've got subjects and objects, right? Like the rat ate the cheese, the mouse ate the cat, the dog ate the cat, right? Whatever. And then if the dog ate himself, now that's gone plus D, right? So to do something to your, I cut myself, or I looked at myself. So then and so English likes to have a real clear difference between who's the subject and who's the object, right? Now, you could say, to the self, you could do all that stuff with English, but the grammar doesn't necessarily change. In Tlingit, the verb undergoes a change to show that.
Okay, so it's commonly used for like to yourself rather.
Usually, or like I'm doing this and it impacts me.
Okay.
But then there are other verbs that are just naturally sort of plus D.
Okay.
So it's an unusual thing in Tlingit, and it's something that we sort of look at.
Okay, one part of one purpose.
Yeah, and if you see an SH before any verb, it'll always be plus D.
Okay.
Okay.
How would you say I cut myself? Would it be like shchada?
Ek is to wound with a knife.
Oh, okay.
Because it wouldn't be shchodachash unless that guy that got his arm pinned under a rock and he cut his own arm off. That might be shchodachash because he kept sawing his arm
just
off.
keep going all the way through.
Right.
Okay, I see.
It would be very unusual. In the movie Saw, I think it happened.
Yeah.
So in the movies, these things happen.
What's the name of that movie where he gets his arm pinned in the rock?
48 hours? No, 70.
Oh, something like that, yeah.
128 hours.
Some amount of hours.
Yeah, it was some amount of hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Some amount of hours.
Okay, so now, so moving left to right, we also have pluralizing the third person, only the third person, and that's hus. So hus would pop up before the verb. Oh, I gotta modify the board for Teslin. The Teslin board is slightly different. Instead of hus, it would be duh. D-A, underline X, no tone. And so this is how you pluralize either a third-person object or a third-person subject, or both. And so these, we talked about this a little bit the other day. This is how Tlingit takes care of the third person. It's a little bit unusual. All the others have their own. So you set the dial to 3 on either the object or the subject, and then you can activate the hus. You can't have hus if you don't have a third-person object or subject. It would have to belong to something else.
Austatine, is that?
Yeah, and so hus austatine could be he or she saw them, they saw him or her, or they saw them. It could be any one of those.
So Lance, how would that work in just using hus?
So if it would depend on what the verb was coming after, because you could say hashishku hus, and so that would be one term. So you would want to use probably awe to separate between that and whatever verb is coming, because you could say, Ashishko has hausatim. Our ancestors can see us. Right? And so you could say something like that. Hachet hasbusiach. They're listening to us. So in that case, it's hachet hasbusiach. So it doesn't matter. So when you get into the specification of things, it doesn't the verb. So it could be wait, cake. Atashuwagu. Those dogs are running around. And so the hus, it's a different hus there. So the hus that you're talking about is the one that pluralizes a kinship term. Hashishku hus, ha'ish hus, achta hus. That one is a high-toned hus.
Okay.
And so usually if you had, like, for example, hashishku hus hus ausitin, you could say that, but most speakers would throw awe in there to just provide a little bit of separation between what we would call the noun phrase and the verb phrase. So the verb phrase typically can, and you could get really technical about how it works, but I think of it as everything that is actually part of the verb conjugation, which begins with, hus and the preverb and some other things. But the specifying noun, like you could say, hus awacha, so they ate them, or he ate a bunch of them, or they ate him or her. So then you would have to do some work outside, because you could say, we dusht, hus awacha kutzin. That cat, and there's a CH marker that pops up on the noun that does the action. It's the cat ate some mice, right? And so because the hus is in there, we know it's plural. Pluralizing the mice is kind of optional. We could say kutzin hasawacha we dusht. And so we tend to front load whatever is the most important information. So if it's more important that the cat did it, because you could say, what did that cat do? And you could say that we dusht au kutzina hasawacha. That cat ate some rats or mice. But then if you said, what did that dasa awacha we dush kutzin awe hasawacha we dush.
So,
And
go ahead.
and you were saying in the inland and the Teslin area, they use more of a dach.
Yeah, you would use dach. So in this case, de slin dach awacha we dush kutzin. But it seems to function just the same, and so that's it's especially Keishi that I heard this from, the dach, and we were really good, because there is a verb prefix dach, and this doesn't have everything. This is the bare bones conjugation switchboard. You could, I'm not going to make the deluxe super edition model, but I will show you where to find this information, and we'll look at James Crippen's work before the night is over. But in that case, there is a dach that's built in, but it's a way to say like each and every one of those. For example, if I were to say, I might say those mice ate my oatmeal. But then the dach could pop up in the prefix to say every one of those mice individually, they all were there eating, and so it's getting into this really specific realm. In Tlingit, you can just, it's like you can just get more and more and more and more and more specific. It's like you're peeling an onion, but there's no center. You just keep peeling forever. Maybe not forever, but close.
I guess back to that question, be like, so, those differences kind of would be like, between what did the cat do, like what happened to the mice, and then what happened here, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We can divide those up into a little bit more specifics, like something happened here, this cat did this here, and these mice were eating it.
Yeah, so Tlingit tends to front load whatever the most important information it's going to give you right on the front.
Subject we asked about, and then the description behind it.
Right, right. Because you could walk in the room and say, "What happened?" You could say, "The way threw all the chairs outside." But if you came inside and you'd say, no way, away. And then in that case, I would, so it's usually a question. These are question and answer examples, but it's not always question and answer. Sometimes you're giving somebody information. And I think English works the same way, where if you had some really important information to tell somebody, and that information was like, I drove my car in a ditch, you probably wouldn't say, "Oh man, I got in my car and I started it, and then I drove down the road and I checked my mail." Unless this was your mode of. Sometimes I tell stories like that where people are like, "And the point," because you had this big sort of oh man kind of moment. But then you say, "I drove my car in the ditch," and you'd usually just sort of get to that.
Okay, kind of like maybe like there's like Ost opened the door and the door was opened by Ost. Whatever's the fact that you're asking for.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, right. And so and this is a way. It's just sort of we're getting into the sort of logic of Tlingit, which is important. Yes. Okay.
There was one other quick question. I was actually trying to look for a small phrase of just having to say just sort of a general, what are you doing? And because I find different things like what are you eating, where are you cutting, what are you drinking, but just a generalized what are you doing? That was something I just couldn't find.
Well, so it gets tricky over the phone because in Tlingit you gotta kind of take a guess at what somebody's doing before you can ask what they're doing. So the two variations are da sa ye da ine. That's the first one. The second one is wasaki yanuk. Those are the two ways you're asking what somebody is doing, generally. If you have no, because then you could say, what are you working on? What are you eating? What are you reading? So those are all sort of you see somebody doing something. What are you sewing? And so you can ask those things. Da, sa, you are verb, right? And that's how that works. Da, sa, and whatever the verb is, conjugated for that person. Da, sa, itu. Da, sa, icha. Da, sa, ijak. What did you kill, right? And, but in this case, da, sa, ye, da, ine, the way it's been explained to me is somebody's kind of working on something, doing something with their hands especially. And so if you just called somebody on the phone and you had no idea, you could use, I guess, one or the other. And dasaki anu is sort of like, more like, what are you up to? What are you, because it has more to do with general doing or behavior. So I would use either one of those.
Okay, thanks.
So now we get into the object. So here, where'd my little mouse go? So then we get into the object, and now we've gotten everything up to this point is actually disconnected from the verb, would be its own sort of word, but still in the verb phrase. Some of these are disconnected and some of them are connected. And we mark that with a hyphen. This one is up to date, I believe. And so the standing rule is if it's one letter, it's attached to the verb. If it's more than one letter, it is detached from the verb unless it's ku. That's how it works. Okay. And so here we code these.
Is that's a different ku than the what's a ku?
Yes. So there is a ku
Okay,
for
so
people.
That's like the ku.
Yeah, ku'ik is to invite people. Kusacha is to eat people. Kusachan is to love people. Let's see.
Pretty close to love and eat right there.
Right? Yeah. Kusecha, kusechan. Okay. So running the knob around, we go back and forth between how we code these things and how we we got these lists. And I think the codes are supposed to help us remember first person singular, first person plural, second person singular, second person plural, third person, because it's pluralized over here, nothing, fourth person human, someone, this happens to someone, or it just happens, fourth person non-human, something. There's this proximal business, which is down here, and it's ush. It's used by more advanced speakers, and this is basically saying this guy or gal that we have been talking about. So you see it pop up in stories, especially. I would think of it as the main character of a story, is ush. And so it does get built into other verbs like ush kushyat, where it's just embedded in the verb. It's not that actual pronoun. But
oh, sorry. I was gonna say, just to clarify. So that's like when you're going into specifics, like as if we were saying, like, oh, that guy, he was just here. He was in that movie,
Yeah, like if we're talking, you and I were talking about Taway, who's over there on the table, and that's Ashwasatin. Oh, I see him. That guy that we've been talking about, or girl.
He was in the conversation last,
Yeah.
He's kind of.
So Tlingit has a pronoun for that.
Okay.
There's another rarely used one, which is ah, which would pop up immediately before the verb, and this means some of them. Right? And so in that case, you might say, did everybody raise their hands and vote yes? And you could say, some of them raised their hand. Right? And there's another term for this, ahu, is used, which literally means the ones, some of them among it, and you use it when you're speaking to mean some of them. It just means some of them. So, for example, Tan wutusatin each kak ahu hin yikt away hasu kak. So what I'm saying is, I saw, I can't remember what country. I saw some sea lions on a reef or a rock, and each, I don't know how to translate that, and some of them some of them swam into the water. Okay? Everybody surviving? Okay. So now we got a set of thematic prefixes. There's an etc. knob on there because there's more than this, but there's basically 3 positions. There may be more, but there's generally 3 positions. So you can have up to 3 of these things. I don't think you can have more. And so similar to I just keep stacking metaphors on all this stuff. Similar to the wheel that spins and you can only have one, once you can't dial in multiples, although some of these, there are identical ones. You just got to get used to that. It's just what you deal with Tlingit. So in this case, the first position of your thematic prefixes, you have k, which is called aerial, which just refers to a space. Kudziti, it exists. Kuwake, the weather's nice. So we call it aerial in certain cases of verbs. It specifically refers to the weather. There's not very many of them, so you can memorize them. In other cases, you'll see it. So and it's identical to k, the pronoun. So you just got to sort of get used to it. And if you do have, because you can have chat kudziti, I exist, right? So now you know that is not the pronoun. Ka is comparative, and whenever you have comparative ka, it usually activates the irialis, which we'll get to later. So this is why you'd say, if I named all of our clan houses, Shah hit, Kushta hit, Qaisan hit, Yesh hit, Yesh Kiji hit, Yechawutli hit, Yesh Kuti hit, and if I named them all, Kushta hit, I might say, Yekuge hanakahitki. That's how many houses there are, right? That's how many of our clan houses. Yekuge is ka-ge. And in this case, it's comparative, which is saying, and in some cases, so you say compare it to something, so you could say, it was this big. My fish was this big. And you hold your arms up for something, so you're comparing it to something. And it works fairly regularly in Tlingit. And in Tlingit, you just got to remember, there's a specific prefix for that. And we know that because you can have taka, which is to bite something, and you can have kakataka, which is pliers. So that is comparative and horizontal surface, which is sort of saying these two surfaces are biting together. And that's how grammatically that word works. So the more you sort of untangle these things, the more you start to reveal how the language is functioning at this sort of micro type of level. The next one is which is athematic. It just means it pops up for certain verbs, it's always there. Asteich, achech, ashuch, achich, awakwat. Some peeing, pooping, and farting, they're all atheme. Ooh. What's that? Atune, hunting, dancing, fishing. You might, maybe we'll look at this big list of atheme and see if there's something that ties them together. I don't think so. Sun shining, storming. I don't think there's any meaning really attached to it. It just sort of, some verbs are just athematic. They're just built that way. I forgot my little underlines down here. Okay. More stuff for the editing room. So the second set of thematics are embedded nouns. They come from nouns. This is a list. There's some more, and I'll show you where you can find more of those. But these are probably your most common ones. And we talked about this. J for hand, T for inside, K for the nose or the point, K or K for the mouth or opening. And there may be some subtle difference between K and K, but I'm not sure. Da is around, Sh is head, Sh is the end of something. Oh, sa or set is voice. So almost to the end of row 1. So now we have a third thematic area, and these ones are probably the most common out of all of them. In particular, ka and the last two. And so conveniently, these are totally identical. Ka, which is spherical or round, as in achchikate wekucheta. Hand me the basketball. Achkawati duwak. Yeh took his eyes out. Right? And so that would be the first one. And you can't have both of them. So it's usually just one or the other. Ka for a horizontal surface. Ya for a vertical surface. I think actually, got some thinking to do. Ayakawadan. You can have ya and ka. So maybe ya goes over here. Okay. Anyways.
Are there rules about how many of the thematic switches can be turned on at the same time?
You can have 3. It's very rare that you would have 3, but you could. Dasa?
But it's not like you would have to choose one from each of these groups.
They don't have to be. No, not at all. And with the thematic prefixes, the thing to remember with the thematic prefix is this doesn't actually conjugate the verb. This creates a whole new verb. Right? So once you turn one of these switches, it would create a new verb. So that's why you have ti, achjit, ti is hand me something. Achjit, kate is hand me something round. And that's how they sort of function, is it creates a different verb. And sometimes that verb is dramatically different. And so sometimes there will be other switches that get turned, And so sometimes we're creating new verbs, sometimes we're just conjugating a particular verb. So here's a rarely seen prefix, but this is to indicate that the subject did something specifically for themselves. And so it would push the verb plus D. I'll show you where you can see examples of this. I have not encountered one that I know of in terms of working with speakers, translating materials and stuff like that, so I don't think it's very common at all. But it is one way to specify, you know, I bought myself chips, right? To specifically say I did something, not necessarily to myself, but for myself. Okay, bottom of the board. Every verb has a conjugation prefix. That conjugation prefix is attached to that verb, and it pops up in certain forms. Do you know any verb modes that would reveal the conjugation prefix?
What is it?
The hortative will reveal the conjugation prefix.
What is imperative?
The imperative or the command form. So they will pop up. And this is why you say, if you're looking at someone and you're being bossy, and if you say, ha, that is a zero conjugation right here. So if you ever encounter a verb, or if you're with a fluent speaker, and you say, how would you boss someone into doing that? And so there's ha, and you could say, nata, go to sleep. And you could say, anu, sit down. And you could say, gadan or gadahan, which is stand up. So there, the ga pops up on the left side of the irialis. The other ones pop up on the right side of the area. And this is throwing a whole bunch of stuff at you. We're going to just take a break from this after and maybe look at a story or do something different because it can be overloading. But we'll actually start seeing how this works. Because what you really do is you turn some of these switches on in a combination, and then bam, you got the future. Ga mode, irialis, plus ga mode, which is over here. And you've got the future. That's how you do a future conjugation form for Tlingit. But it will always contract into other things. So you wouldn't say gao qa. Instead, you would say ka qua, which is ga u qa ha. It's you ka qua. Okay. And we'll get to this stuff. It's crazy, but it's lots of fun.
I gotta say, right now, I just kind of feel lost.
Okay. Well, we'll make it through this thing, and then we'll come back, and then we'll look at some verbs, and we'll.
Are there any instances where it wouldn't contract?
You could say like gukla, but it's still contracting because, and you got to keep track of these prefixes because wherever the classifier is, once you go left of the root, if you got 3 or more things, there's going to be contraction. There just has to be. So gukla is as close as you get in the future, and that's ga, the a falling off and just adapting the u that comes out. Okay, British cheese for telling me. We'll move through this and we'll do something else. We'll revisit this in shorter forms. So usually this is off. And then the thing to keep track of here is there's a conjugation prefix that pops up, for certain verb modes. Like hortative means the translation of a hortative verb is let it be. So we say let it exist. You can say yenqati, let it be that way. You could say angakash, let him or her cut it. And these are the verbs that Raven uses a lot. And he says, and in the little stories too, there's a story, and Chashakach gets stuck at the Tzigeidi's house. So he says, let the water freeze, and it freezes. He sings this song. And so this reveals some things about the way language functions from the Tlingit perspective. Because if you can conjugate verbs a certain way, sing them, things are going to happen. So there's two types here. There's a conjugation, which is the conjugation prefix, and there's the mode. The mode would pop up, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just to put certain conjugations of the verb in, to put the verb in a certain mode. Irialis is specifying that the verb has not happened. That's what the Irialis does. So it pops up in all negative forms, future forms, and in certain cases, like if you have comparative things, it tends to pop up. Here's your other set of conjugations, which we sort of briefly talked about. And we'll come, a lot of your time now is spent absorbing more language, and we've talked about this. You should be out there studying lists of words, listening to Tlingit, engaging speakers, trying to say new things, looking at phrases. But the other part is going to be going in and remembering, getting to understand this complicated verbal structure, which is, it seems like impenetrable to a lot of people, but it's not. As you just keep as you look at verbs and you diagram how they function, and you conjugate verbs and you look verbs up. I think the first step is just looking things up in the verbs that are already conjugated for you, and you can add person in there. It's figuring out where the object and subject go in these things and inserting them. So you could say, I'll see you, I'll see y'all later, we'll all see each other later, so you can just get a little bit more dynamic with who's doing what. And then from there, you start to sort of get into the verb modes and figure out the nuts and bolts of what's putting these things together, so that you can do that by hearing a verb and then just giving it a shot. So you hear that verb and then you're able to conjugate it in all these different ways. But, in English, if you get a new verb, you can usually conjugate it because the verb doesn't really change. There might be some things like run to ran and things like that are unusual, but there's not a whole lot of unusual stuff. You throw a certain prefix on there, a suffix, and you got it every time. With Tlingit, there's more moving parts. It's going on. So we're almost to the end. Perfective specifies that the verb has been completed, and it has reached some certain state of completion. And we're going to get into a classifier thing that shows you that as well. And there are certain, and this does not mean past tense, because you say chwaseku. And the reason you say chwaseku is because the perfective marker is in there, because you have to reach that state of knowing in order to know something. And that's how Tlingit functions. And so the other things that get people is Tlingit looks at time and verbs differently than English, right? Because if you said, oh, well, what's the past tense of know? Knew. I knew it. But in Tlingit, that means you don't know it now, which I think in English would probably be the same. I guess you could say, that's when I knew it. Right? I guess you could do that. But otherwise,
I knew I was being followed by a murderer.
Yeah, but if you say, I knew his name, that usually says, I don't know his name now. Right? And so in Tlingit, you could throw a decessive on there, chwasakuwin, which would be, I used to know, but now I don't. And so this is why you also, when you see someone, you say, Yake'irosatini, and the perfective is there because you have to have seen that person in order to say you've seen them. And this is just how Tlingit looks at things. A lot of some specific state things, and for things to be certain ways, you're going to get the perfective marker in there quite a bit. And then there's a qa mode, which is, it really just functions to conjugate verbs in certain modes. Subjects and classifiers, then no more big scary switchboard. Okay, so for verbs to have subjects, these are the the things that are doing the verb, same thing, first person, second person, third person, fourth person, singular, plural, and you can only have a fourth person human. Unknown things cannot do verbs in Tlingit. It has to be some sort of person. And so for the third person is also animals or aliens or whatever else. It would all just be he or she, right? So here we've got cha, tu, I, ye, zero marker, and du. So that's the subject, and it goes right there, right before the classifier every single time. So the classifier belongs to one of these four groups. The zero group is a default group, doesn't really mean anything. The S usually is either classifying the verb, so I'm a member of this group, right? I could say shukach adich chatzati, siti as opposed to yati. And that means I'm a member of this group. Or it has to do with agency. Somebody made that verb happen. And same with the L group. I often see it as verb nouns, like shagoosh. It's finned. It has a dorsal fin on it. Shajin. There's a place name, the place, the cotton-wooded place. Duq is a noun, and so if you make a verb out of a noun, actually that one's using the S. Anyways, so they switch groups sometimes to talk about the verb having different functions. The SH is generally associated with negative things. And every classifier that belongs to a group can be plus D or minus D, plus I or minus I. The D indicates middle voice, or kicking the object out. The I indicates whether the verb has been completed or not. That's it. That's enough. Good away. We're getting off the switchboard.
In the subject, can the second person plural also be ye? Or does that have to be ye?
It would be ye if there's a perfected marker there.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, it would be ye. So I would say ye sakuge.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is you've got yi for ye. But perfective plus second person singular is ye.
Yeah.
Yisaku.
Oh, yeah.
Yisaku, right?
And yeast.
Yisaku. So second person plural plus perfective is Y-E-E-Y.
Yeah.
So then you get ye. So then you just sort of really got to fine tune your ear for these little differences. And as we read them, we'll see these differences. And just the more you sort of, these resources that are out there to look these verbs up that are already conjugated. But then you start to look at the prefix and say, oh, well, how are these things adding up to create these other things? For example, as we come through and we look at, we'll just look at a couple of examples in the Tlingit Verb Dictionary. And then we'll take our break. I know it's brain overload day. My favorite day. Okay, so let me shut this thing down. Throw this thing out. Okay, so if we just start right at the beginning of this, and you can spend a lot of time being confused in Tlingit. I think you spend a lot of time too just sort of starting to put the pieces together. So this is where you come back into your texts with a little bit more of a mission now. Yeah, and there's tons of wonderful sentences in here. I mean, they're not wonderful like, gosh, that would be terrible. But they're, sometimes you're like, oh, well, now I know how to say that. So to abandon, to eat is sort of related to trash or just discarding things. So these verb roots have all these different relations. We have the L classifier because somebody's specifically doing this, right? Abandoning can't just happen without somebody abandoning, right? Abandoners take her responsibility. So de ki na, there's your verb. That's our Tlingit word for haida. De
It's your
ki.
noun.
What's that?
It's your noun.
Oh, sorry, that's our noun.
It's your verb.
That's our verb. I'm haida. We do verbs if we want to.
I'll shake you.
He hided it. So Deki is out to sea. Na is a nation, clan, or group of people. Jeet. So this is, again, this becomes part of the verb. G is the possession. The T, we talked about these directional things, is to arrive. Jeet, it. So this is a number of things going on here. Anybody want to take a shot at some things that are going on in the verb?
Which verb again?
It. It. Anything based on our crazy little board that we went over. Where does the come from? So if there's an here, and it would show you an A if it were A-themed, and it's not an A-themed verb, so this is a third-person object, and there must be then a third-person subject. Because that's why you get the is because the object and subject. So here's him, her, or it, perfective marker, him, her, or it, who's the subject, is the classifier. All perfective positive verbs will have a plus I classifier. It is the root. It. He or she abandoned or turned over or left. And so in this case, the way we're using this verb would be like it was given over to them. And who knows what it was. It could be part of, maybe they were fighting and they said, okay, take the hat. Don't kill us all, take the hat. Something like that.
Did they handwrite all the tone
I believe they did.
in every copy?
Well, you just have one and then they just through the process of reproduction. But yeah. And if you look at the old dictionaries and stuff, the underlines, I think they did too. These ones, I think, the underlines are probably built in. So here we have akhshat. This is a noun. It has a pronoun and a kinship term. My wife. What is this khat business?
Me.
Me, right? So this is the object pronoun for me. One thing with this dictionary is they write a lot of vowels long that we would today write short. So this would be a U if we were writing it today. So this would be WU, so this is the perfective marker, W, and then it would be shit, same thing. Okay, we'll do a couple more and we'll take a break. So here we got atkhashaqas. And shaqas, there's a related sort of noun, which means for something to be forbidden. And so this is a similar sort of form, which means to stay away from something. So, for example, you could say, Achwe ach ish na nijkak atchayi chashaqas. Because my father died, I'm avoiding eating things off the beach, which is, it is a Tlingit thing, and also ich, they did not eat things off the beach either. But here you've got at, which is something, khashaqas. They also write this downward tone, and that just means it's a low tone. Don't even just ignore it. It just means it's a low tone. So there's the kha for me, sh, the classifier, qas. These would both be short. Wududliqas. W is the perfective marker. D is the fourth person for people. So in this case, wududliqas, you could say they are, but another way would be things are being abstained from. Okay, that's probably good enough. Let's take 8-minute break or so. Come back about 6:50. Do something a little different, a little less grammatical, perhaps. But let me know if you guys have any questions after the break.
So we still haven't really fully finalized everything for Saturday. Kind of.
Just the last thing, I think.
Yeah. Maybe we can just do small group discussions.
We can do that.
You just
I'm sure it
give
could,
them a question of, what now?
yeah.
I thought about doing the one word thing, but I couldn't think of a good. I don't think we always have to do that. It was kind of a trendy, fun thing to do.
Oh, I meant to email Saul about what he'll be presenting and what I'll be presenting. Like there was kind of some overlap. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it was a matter of whether you were going to read Will's
Mhm.
paper or whether he
He
was
would.
going to do some interpretation of it. It's totally up to you.
I don't know. You're right. Isn't that a reminder kind of thing?
You?
Or, I mean, on Facebook, can you send out a reminder?
Oh,
Kind of thing?
I think you can share the event.
Because I started a little keynote, just with little highlights.
Oh, good.
Just little quotes, nothing big or anything. But
You send it to me by Friday evening and I'll put them all together.
okay.
To put a presentation.
Okay.
Or have it.
Are you gonna? Oh, okay. Never mind.
Is Rune still in the room?
Like us cut. I don't know if that works, but
Since he's not in the room, we'll say it does.
that's It'll just I don't know. It'll just be recorded forever, whatever you say. Are you feeling better? Did you find out what's going on?
Super reassuring.
Is it still hurting?
Yeah. I don't know. And they're like, the blood tests and all the tests they did came back like kind of normal.
Wow.
So it's like, sorry, we just don't know what's going on with you.
Did they do an X-ray or anything?
No. They did an ultrasound. That was really painful. Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of relieving. So it's like basically just take care of yourself and tough it out until something either more drastic happens or it goes away. Because there's like that. Weird.
Is Kuni back now?
Uh,
I wanted to tell you I had a language moment today. I was on the phone with Verizon and I had to spell something out for them. And I started using the Tlingit pronunciations of A and U. And then I had to correct myself, and it was kind of a pity that I had to say U instead of but I thought it was great. It was like my first time going straight for the Tlingit without thinking about it.
That's winning. That's awesome.
Verizon Yaya Waka. So Yaya Naka.
Yeah, we were reading something in a class the other day, and the word was tape. And I was looking at it going, tape. Oh, no.
Oh, I was going to ask, are you going to be using your computer maybe for the things, or is it going to be on Windows?
No.
Okay, because I'll do Keynote.
Yeah.
I don't have PowerPoint. Yeah.
Okay, is everybody overloaded on verbal terminology? How's your projects going? Great?
I have a question
Yeah.
about projects. Can we do something that's like, I can email it to you and then you can pull it up on the screen type thing?
Sure.
Yeah. And then like, or you could use the cursor.
Yeah, we could use the mouse. You could use the mouse, whatever. Yeah, sure. Anyone else? Questions?
I'm having a hard time figuring out what exactly it should be a picture of. But I think that's like
I couldn't figure that out either.
It's like an
So I'm gonna do a
existential
collage.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Problem.
don't go crazy. You know, like if it's stick figures, that's fine. I mean, this is not. It's not like I can be like, well, your sentences were fine, but.
But I don't think that picture represents
I'm
you very well.
surprised. If you want to find a picture, it doesn't matter if it was really an idea to help you. The idea is you're using visuals to help convey something. If you want to make a slideshow of a series of found images, that's completely fine. If you're not comfortable drawing something, I would say, as far as keeping it a language lesson, you may not want to go into highly sensitive content, but that's totally up to you. I just think sometimes like raising the emotional stakes sometimes makes you raise the linguistic stakes. And really we're just trying to the exercise, think of it as an exercise. I'm not over here making all my notes about all the things that have gone wrong. Although if I don't see any real effort, I'm going to be a little disappointed. But the goal here is to take the language as far as you can. So the other idea is I wouldn't want to see you over the weekend saying, hey, could you translate these 20 sentences for me? And I can understand if you're having trouble getting stuck on stuff, I'll certainly help you if you're stuck on things. My preference would be, how much can you do with the resources that are out there and convey some information to us? And the idea of having it being about you is it's stuff you already know, right? So it's not stuff you really have to speculate on. And it doesn't have to be, this is everything that I am in this picture in these 20 sentences, but more like, hey, it's what I did last summer, right? Or, it doesn't necessarily, I said autobiographical, but you just don't take that to heart. Just
write an autobiography.
Right.
In 20 sentences.
20 sentences, and you'll never have a chance to tell the world again. No, that's absolutely not true. So, just think of things. The idea is to have you communicate some things to us that we should be able to understand without using any English, and that we should be able to, the visuals are intended to help, not to hurt. And so maybe I should have specified that more at the beginning, but wherever you're at, you're probably doing just fine. So whether talk about, and if you're stuck and you can't find specific words for things, let me know, and we'll either make something up that will maybe change later, or I'll try and find it for you. Other thoughts, concerns?
Well, I was gonna say, just for me, like trying to get those specific ones that I have done. I don't know if that actually would be alright, just to actually just come up with it. Sorry, I was out for a second, couldn't get a call from the home, but you were saying something about like finding the names or finding some, certain words.
Yeah, if there's a word you can't find, let me know, and I'll let you know if I know of it. And if not, we might end up using, if there's an English name for something here and there, that's not the worst thing in the world.
Oh, yeah, because I was going to say, I only got like maybe 5 or 6 words that I haven't found yet. And 2 I'm looking up right now is just for Godzilla and Airborne.
Airborne?
Yeah.
Like flying?
You mean, or like?
Like, well, Airborne infantry.
Oh, okay.
I figure Airborne is a little bit easier.
What do they mean? Does that mean like parachutes?
Yeah, parachutists.
Did you parachute?
Yeah. That's cool. It really wasn't.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say
It's probably in a different situation.
yeah, like, it looks cool when you're watching people do it, you're thinking that's awesome, but when you see other people jumping out with you and you notice like one guy's chute doesn't open or one guy gets tangled in with another and stuff, you kind of.
I have never wanted to do it.
I want to know skydiving would be really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, high altitude is by far one is scary, but I'll say I'd rather, if it had to be anything dangerous, it'd definitely be that.
Jumping out of a plane.
Okay.
That's what I would call airborne.
Okay.
But there's certainly I could ask other people. I know combat veterans who might, because there are certain things, naming things like, what are we going to call the lid to a coffee cup? That's not a big deal. But certain things get into, like, what are we going to call this division of the armed forces? And then usually when I consult with, and there's plenty of speakers who've been to combat, and they might be offended if you came up with some term that didn't somehow carry the same weight.
Because I mean, the only 3 guys that I've met that are like that, most they always say is just, just keep it in its English term until someone has an awesome sounding word to it, like jumper or something like that.
Yeah.
Or they're just saying other things, just like if they ever come up with a word for Superman, make that for Airborne.
Oh. Well, there's is the word for a warrior. That's something.
Yeah, I figured that would be used for Army or Marine or something.
Okay. Anyone else?
Okay.
Hi, Lance. This is Carol. I think I'm on the wrong track. I thought that we just came up with. I thought you said something about like 2nd grade level or something real simple thoughts. And are we
Yeah.
gonna, show those
Yeah,
to me today?
No. That would be next week. So next week you're going to say whatever your sentences are, and it should be what I would prefer is sort of at the. I'm going to mute you for a second here. Getting some feedback on your end. I would say to push yourself to the level that you're comfortable with, so that if you say a sentence, you're not saying, well, I'm pretty sure no one's going to understand anything if I try to say this. But wherever you're at, I want to see that you're sort of pushing yourself to the upper realm. And what I'm saying is, yes, I am not expecting you to dazzle me with your tremendous sentences, although if that's where you think you are, you can. But yes, we are thinking of very basic statements that you are putting together yourself. And they are. We're saying like second grade level stuff, and that's kind of where we're at with some of our Tlingit. So you're not trying to do, so the example might be, we drove to Iowa, right? Not, we saw 10 geese flying through the sky in a V formation while we were driving to Iowa, and I was eating an apple. Right? So we're not trying to stack things up. Because when you can stack things in Tlingit, but it starts to get it gets really interesting really fast. And some of the things aren't too challenging. But if it's like simultaneously things happening or this happening because of this thing, it does get a little bit tricky. And so I've done exercises like this, and I haven't given that sort of don't get too high of expectation, and then students have gotten themselves in trouble because I wanted to translate Pablo Neruda, and I'm like, that sounds awesome, but you need to wait 5 years at least before you do something like that, and instead translate Dr. Seuss, or if something rhymes, forget it. If the whole purpose is rhyming, don't even translate it. Like, I read books to my kids and I read them all in Tlingit. If they give me like nursery, I'm like, no, I'm not going to read that. Have your mom read it to you in English, because it's just it'll just tangle your brain, and you're not going to be communicating stuff that efficiently. Some of them work. The stupid spoiled little llama who throws fits all the time. Not
And just remind me of that rap group, the Wolfpack, that was at a Sitka cave. They pretty much tried to rap in Tlingit. Took them all like 2 months to go public, and then to get shut down by everybody who actually spoke Tlingit.
Oh, okay. Probably didn't come out very well. So don't, whatever you do, it's going to be awesome. It's an exercise, it's a chance for you to display some things. It's not some sort of thing where the only risk of failure is if, like, for some reason you just vanished, or if you just obviously just read some totally unchanged phrases out of a book. So I would like to see a little bit of, well, let me try to do a little bit with this, but don't push yourself so hard that you just have a terrible weekend banging your head against the wall and throwing all your books across the room.
Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I found these phrases that demonstrate what I want to say out of the Verb book.
Uh-huh.
And I put them in order, and so I have trouble with, I wanted to say she hopes for it is what was in the Verb book, but I want to say I hope for it, and I don't really know how to switch, or she was satisfied, and I want to say I am satisfied. So from she was to I am.
So let's,
I'm not real. Should I email you?
Yeah, but let's actually take a look at, so let me find maybe a couple of these and see. So to wish for, so if we look up something like, to wish, says wait, warble.
Warble? There's a word,
Yeah, like birds. So this would be it. So here's the perfective form, achashches, or the imperfective form, so it's happening right now. And so this particular verb, you see, it is A-themed. It's marked with the A right there. And then you say, in this case, achashches. And you could say, and so I'll show you another source, and we'll see if it's at this other source for us as well. Hang with me 1 second. Okay, so this is the continuing verb documentation work by Carrie Eggleston, and there's no guarantee that the verb is in here, but if we look here and we see achashches. So what this is showing us is A-themed DL classifiers, so the classifiers plus D, it's in the L group, ches. So we can look up ches in some of Carrie's newer work, Agishavu, and it's right here. And then we go down, achashches, achashches. So then you got the verb conjugated for you here. So a lot of this stuff, what I'm hoping is you're able to use to get to this. I think if you just went into Google and Googled Tlingit verbs, perhaps. Oh, mine just remembers where they are. So searching Google, you get to 575 Tlingit verbs, which might have it. And then there's also continuing verb documentation is what you're looking for. And my recommendation is once you find it and you click on this Tlingit verb roots, you just bookmark this page. And like if you're serious about learning the language, you should be going to this website all the time because they're conjugated for you. So you could say, oh, now you could know how to tell people don't be stinky. And you could say, ishichan, you stink. Not that you necessarily want to say that.
Is that chatlechan? Is that would that not contract?
No, because it's the object.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not stinking something. You know, I don't know if you can stink something, right? So that would be the same thing. Like in English, you would say, I stink. You're not saying, I am stinking, right? Mm-hmm. You maybe could say that. So yeah, and so what this does, I guess we should touch on this too. We'll go back to wish. It's a nicer. I like to tease sometimes, but I can get in trouble for teaching you guys only that stuff. So this one, and this is in the Raven stories too, when he's wishing for things, you know, and so it's a very strong wish, and sometimes you have, you know, like you've changed the tidal action, or you've changed the weather or something. Letter A themed. Capital S, that's where the subject goes. So it would go I, y, ch, tu. So now, and it does take a little bit of work, and then this combination is showing you the classifier. This is showing you the root. This is showing you the conjugation prefix. This is showing you what type of verb it is. But for now, once you see this S, you know that is where you start. You look up your subject pronouns. Achashches, ashches, atushches, ayishches, ayches. And so you can conjugate this for person. The A popping up before it does make it a little bit more complicated. But the same, we can go here to love. There's another nice verb. And we got asechan. So here we see O, S, S. And so capital S is subject, capital O is object, classifier, root. So you've got asechan. And this is going to be third person, third person. So you could say chatsechan. he or she loves me. Isachan, he or she loves you. And so this is where we're getting, but I don't expect you guys to necessarily conjugate it and but if you can find it, use it. If you have to use a third person verb and you're talking about yourself, that's just fine. If that's the only thing you could find, or I would be fine over the weekend if you emailed me and said, oh, I found this verb, but I'm just trying to figure out how I would say I instead of he or she. I can help you with that. It's not a problem. But I don't want to get a sentence that says, well, how would I say, and if the verb isn't listed here, just write a different sentence. We can get those other ones later if you're trying to get super crazy. Because what she did here is she's surveyed a lot of the language community, in particular second language learners, and she said, what verbs do you use the most? What are the most common verbs? Because with Tlingit, there's probably 2 or 3, maybe more, 1,000 verb roots. So you got to start somewhere. Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, can we have notes, or do we have to memorize this stuff?
You can have notes.
Okay.
You can read right off your list. That's fine. I would prefer if you did not take your sentences to a fluent speaker and say, hey, translate these for me. Not everybody has access to the fluent speaker, and the goal here is to get you into the resources, right? I mean, it's neat if you could have somebody say it and you can write it. I think that's cool. But for this particular thing, yeah. Okay. What do you guys want to do now? Get some options.
There was actually one more thing I wanted to ask, if just quickly. There was one area that I was kind of having a little bit of troubles trying to find of how to fit it all together. And in English, I was trying to say when I was, like when I was a baby. But putting the when I was, I had having trouble trying to fit those together.
This is how you do it. You would say, and to say a baby, and in Tlingit a baby is something that doesn't really move around. It's kind of stuck in the cradle board. When it starts crawling around and running around, I think it becomes katsku. That's how it works in my brain. Anyways. So you would say tukaneyich chatsatiyi dach. And I'm going to write this on the board because I want to show you guys how this stuff works. And this is a good introduction to time and some of these, because we read about some of these directional things. Actually, I'm going to change this. Hold on one second. Bear with me.
Is there any way to make it so that it doesn't always go to that Helvetic? I've been trying to find it.
There's some way, but I don't know. I'll figure it out. If I figure it out. So you could say, there's tukane. Oh, hold on. Would you tell me how to spell? I am a terrible speller. I can spell, like if you ask me how to spell things, but when I'm typing, I'm like, yeah, this letter's done. And I'm like, oh, I better spell check. I turn around, it's just red lines everywhere. So here's tukane. We're going to add a suffix. Tukaneyich. And we would say there's chat, and what is that thing doing? What is that thing? I, this is the first person singular object. So here's how the classifier and the other things start to work. If you could say this, it's amazing, because babies can't say complicated sentences. But tukaneyich chatzati. Everybody say tukaneyich chatzati. Tukaneyich chatzati. You guys are more like Katsku. You've been at this language thing for a little while. You're not quite babies anymore. But there's a couple of things that would happen. One is the classifier would go minus I, and then we would throw, and now this has become basically a noun. You switch that classifier to minus sign, it kind of is becoming a noun. And then you put this suffix on there, which means from. And not all time references work like this. But you would say, from the time I was a baby. This is one way you could handle that. Oops. So this is saying, from the time I was a baby. And so another way you could handle this is you could say, when I was a child. And you can even say, these are sentences for a guy. If you were, these two would change to Shatkiatsku and Yis Shawat. But this would be from the time I was a young man. And this is one way you could handle it. Another way is you could say, Chutle Tukane. Then you would have something else. What can happen when I was a baby?
I would cry.
All the time.
Nooch.
So in this case, we would, now this is a little bit more straightforward. When I was a baby, I cried all the time. So it's getting a little bit more complicated to do this form because you're adding tle, which is sort of, it means when or then. And when you hear fluent speakers, they might throw tle in there 2 or even 3 times in a particular sentence. But tle is really tying a couple of concepts or a couple of verbs together to say that they're happening kind of at the same time. You get?
Finish, cheese.
Oh, I would stick with the top one just for now. Because we're getting into, this is relative phrases is what we're seeing here, and they're sort of tying themselves together, which is fun.
Is the ye on the end of sati, is that making that one the relative phrase? I'm probably not saying that right.
Yeah, this is here. So it's saying like when this, right? So it's kind of a cause and effect thing. And so usually you would say when verb E, verb.
When verb E, verb.
So this is one way. And so the same thing here. So you could say we've got yake plus yuch sakin. We add these together, classifier changes, add the relative marker. This is what makes it good. So that's why we get this marker here. The classifier changes, which in this case should be probably there. So you got a couple things to keep in mind when you start tying things together. It does get a little bit more complicated, and then there's even more and more complicated ways to tie phrases together. And this is where not just the grammar of the verb phrase itself, but of multiple interacting verb phrases. And they start to affect each other. But this is how you get dynamic. And as you start to read other speakers, you sort of pay attention to more Tlingit, which is why after talking about this stuff, we usually go into the Tlingit oratory, and we start to look for things, which we'll probably do after your guys' awesome presentations. I do know one thing that we need to do before we do probably anything else here. myself a little table. Tables are fun. Kijk, naast de Kijin. Goedenacht, dat kijk tegen naast de Kijin. Gedusje, de gedusje is gedusje gushok. See if you. The last time. Okay. Let's go first.
Me, please.
Kawuch wege. So, pass the spelling test. Okay. Aka adusa. Gotta be something. Young goose.
Goose. Oh, the second O.
The what?
The second O has the little.
No, it's the first one.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
what you.
Yes.
It's okay. And then it's yak is the first part.
Yeah, with the lower K. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know what. Yeah, the alternate.
It's okay. It should go in first.
Okay. I'll let you know.
I'm not sure what you're asking us to do here.
This is the order of presentations for next week.
No, he's
Who is ready?
Who is best?
Yeah.
I never won. Oh wait, I'm going first. Yes, this is the order of our presentations. Usually I sort of have more of a process, but this is a
Yeah,
process.
where's the cards?
Usually I have cards. We have time.
Yeah,
We have 10
cards.
minutes. Pick a number, any number.
I'll go next, Taguha.
Sheesh.
I get no number.
Ta.
Oops. Ah, where'd my marker go? Then this is high tone here?
No.
High tone A. G-U-H, low tone A.
Okay.
It doesn't have a hat.
Low tone.
Yeah. Hat.
It has a hat.
Which one has a hat?
The last A.
No, low tone A.
Does this look right?
Long and low. Tagu.
Long and low?
Long and low. But doesn't it?
Oh, that was that guy's name. Harold Jacobs.
Hmm.
Who did the whole.
These are for presentation.
These are for presentations next week.
And I'll go next. Or what are you looking for? Titles? Oh no.
Yep, it's your name.
Oh.
I'll go.
Fortune figures for gold.
There's so many ones. We're going to wait so long.
I have a suggestion.
Wagga?
Une, one of my kids dislocated his shoulder, so I'm going to fly outside and help him for a few days. So I'll probably miss Tuesday's class. So could I go maybe first thing Thursday?
Okay.
So we just have to.
Finish Tuesday.
Number 8 is probably first thing Thursday.
Yeah. Once I spell Isai.
I think it was S-E.
S-E, high tone, E, S-A-L-I. That's fine.
Thought it was S high tone I. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it
Ice.
changed, yeah,
It's
this is
pepper
from,
ice.
it's not.
S-E.
S-E-L. Hey, Pashu, got it over there. Maybe you're in the air. Put you down as number 9. We'll see if the other mystery folks resurface.
I have a suggestion
Cecily?
to keep our presentations fluid in time sense. I've seen this happen in other classes where it works out pretty well, but like if we just take and go and make our little notes on what we want to ask each other, kind of, and then do it at the end and be like, all right, so who has questions or comments on Sumik's presentation? Or, you know,
Good
so then you have
point.
like time to think about it and digest and really think about what you want to ask and say.
I once gave a final exam that was more than 4 hours. So yes, we'll do no Q&A after, we'll just do presentation after presentation after presentation. Bring paper, make notes about questions or thoughts that you want to share after somebody's presentation. And let's try to get up, share your sentences. You don't have to give me the narrative of your project and tell me the things you wish you would have done, or that, well, I don't want to hear it. Not that I don't want to hear it, but it's just that I don't want to hear it. We just want to get things moving, okay? Okay. We have 5 minutes. Let's do some phrases. These are fun. Huh?
Hey, Lance, I have one more question.
Okay, go.
Are we just doing Tlingit, or are we also including the English at all, anywhere on there?
Only Tlingit. We should be able to understand. I should be able to understand. And we all should be able to understand. Okay?
Should come up with some phrases that are just nonsensical.
Your goal isn't to create nonsense. Okay, let's just do some interjections. We only have 4 minutes, and these are fun. They can mean a whole bunch of different things depending on how you use them, when you use them, the tone of your voice. So the translation here is really just a rough attempt. But these are things you can use a lot. And some of the big ones is, as you get into presentations, my hope is I don't hear this word because it's not Tlingit. That is not Tlingit. What is Tlingit is ah or what. Those are awesome and how. What those allow you to do is take a pause, put your words together, and you're reading probably off of a list. You will hopefully have practiced this a little bit. I would like to hear a little, the other thing that we try to do as we begin to move into displaying our language abilities is we try not to go, tu, yak, a, good, nash, cheese, right? And so you try not to be the Tlingit robots, but that you are a human being with some emotion. I know that language is a challenge. I know acquiring and using language is a challenge. But have fun. Put some emotion into it. Put some personality into it. That's what these are intended to do. Okay, running through them fairly quickly. Repeat after me. Ha-eh. 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 Do. 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 Ja.
Ja.
Ja. Ja.
Ja. Ja.
Hachqua.
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 Chqua.
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 And that was like, I told you not to do that. Now look what
I told you so.
Right, kinda. Or, you kinda deserve that. Ach adi.
Adi.
Ach adi.
Adi.
Hadla.
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 For inlanders, sometimes they say hado.
Hado.
Hado. Gla.
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 Flake.
Claw.
Flake gla.
Claw.
I glaw your gla
Hot
every
gla.
time.
Hot
Hot
claw.
gla.
Hot gla.
Hot your gla. Sh. Sh. Gua.
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 Ha.
Huh.
Ha.
Huh.
Ha.
Huh.
Ha.
Huh.
Eitsk.
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 Atskani.
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 Cup.
Cup. Cup.
Come.
Come.
Cup.
Cup.
And the P, I don't know if the P is post contacting. I don't know, I've heard it from fluent speakers. Cup.
Cup. Cup.
Come.
Come.
Cup.
Cup.
That's for little mistakes. You don't need to bring out the big when you make some little error. That is for big errors.
That's. Oh, sorry.
Oh, good.
I was actually wondering for the Yeguaya Juan, how does that work in there?
It has to do with hope.
Okay.
But I don't. That one is. There's some phrases that are just really hard, because like Juan is kind of like sort of a softener. It means it's boots as a noun, but it's also Juan like Hagu Juan. It's sort of to soften a command. It's not please, because we don't need please in Tlingit, but it is making things a little more polite. And so yi gu ayah Juan. That's my guess. Although there could be some contraction of some other verb, but it's not this one up here that's surprise. It's different.
It's also iduaya.
You'll hear du'ayah one. And there is, it could be related to the verb to be situated or to sit somewhere. Like du'a would be somebody is sitting there. So it could be just sit there like someone, or just, there's another related verb which means to kind of meditate or to be calm. So it could be related to that. But there's a number of, and some of these little interjections too, and other little phrases that we use a lot, some of them are almost impossible to translate, because it could be like gunashish, that comes from the verb aushachish, but we don't really know how over time it has transformed, and so it's probably something like, you made this possible, because aushachish means possible. He thought it was possible. So, yeah, and there are, and these are good to know. They're good to use on a regular basis. You can replace whatever you would say in English with these, and it really helps with your fluency and to push you to think in Tlingit. So we're doing all these things to brainwash you, which is what Hakashat used to tell us to do. Is we'll be brainwashing you, and you'll be brainwashing yourself, because we got to get the English to stop taking over the universe.
Demon English.
Who's the expert devil? Who's the expert? Any last minute thoughts or questions?
It's me again. Lance, can I do a PowerPoint? Is that what we're saying here? Like if I had 13 sentences, can I do a picture with each sentence and give it to you, and you do a PowerPoint?
Absolutely. And you could, if you want to run it, you could send it to me. I think you could also share it from your computer as well. Whichever one if you feel more comfortable just giving it to me and just saying next slide, I'm totally fine with that. So yeah, if you guys want to do, you don't have to draw anything. You could draw if you want to, but if that's stressing you out, go find some images on the internet, and have some fun with it if you want to. Be serious with it if you want to. It's your chance to communicate some stuff to us about you and your life, because we all love each other.
I was gonna make a clay mask and a clay.
Yeah, you do that if you want, whatever you want.
It's gonna carve a house screen.
Over the weekend.
Yeah.
I made this totem poles outside.
It's on one of the trees, yeah.
Okay.
Tell anybody else.
Anything else? Okay, Jawe. Finish cheese.
Let's cheese.
Igor Juan.
Yes, sheesh.
Yeah, Quinty.